In the Huddle was created to give student athletes, parents and coaches an inside look at the journey through US college sport and all that comes with it. The demands, the experiences, the excitement and the opportunities available to our student athletes from around the world. Study and Play USA facilitates a comprehensive, customised approach for student athletes and families for their whole journey, from their high school preparation years right through to US college graduation. Today's guest on In the Huddle comes to us from Chile, Indiana. James Hone started his college journey back in 2016 at Franklin College as a prize swimming recruit from Melbourne, Australia. He's agreed to join us to reflect on his 4-year experience and share his story of transition into the workforce since his graduation. Welcome, James.
Hi, Chris. Good to be here.
Awesome, mate. Great to see you. And mate, you haven't changed too much from when I last saw you. You still look like you're in high school, mate, but you tell me you're 24 now, right?
Yeah, 24. Been here for 5 years now. So yeah, it's been a while. So hopefully I haven't lost my accent too much. So one thing I want to keep.
Yeah, it's in your best interest to keep it, right?
Exactly. Yeah, they love it over here.
It sure do. Gets you into trouble and out of trouble, they tell me.
Yeah.
And what are you up to, man? I mentioned you're in Indiana, but obviously you're working now. Can you tell us about what you're doing at the moment?
Yeah. So I graduated 2020. And then after that, I was lucky enough to get a job with Cummins. So they're a large diesel engine manufacturer, and their actually head office is in Columbus, Indiana, which is like 25 minutes from where I went to college. So I actually internship with them during my last 2 years in college, and then from that they offered me a job, and been working there since in corporate chemical technology, and really loving it. Working with engine oil, coolant, fuel, and doing lots of data analysis with that, and improving engine efficiency and performance. So yeah, loving it.
Wow, mate, that's really good. And is that sort of something you envisaged when you were in Australia before you went over to college? That's sort of the industry you wanted to get into?
Yeah, correct. Always had an interest in sort of the automotive and aerospace world. And when I was in my final years of high school, I was really interested in aerospace engineering, and that was one of my top preferences, going into applying for universities in Australia. And I've done a few internships along the way. I actually went back home and visited during college, went back to Melbourne, got an internship with a V8 supercar team down there. So did that over the summer. So it was good to be able to come back and visit my family and friends, but then also, do some work experience, which I really loved. And then, I'm around in Indiana, which is something I started learning, is there's, tons of automotive manufacturing here. Like Rolls-Royce is also located in Indiana. So there's lots of opportunities for that. And it's lucky enough, to pick up an internship at Cummins, and it was a really great experience. And I was happy that I could continue to pursue my passion of what I wanted to do.
Yeah, that's interesting, mate. So, that's a very specific passion, So, when you're thinking about that when you're in high school, you've got to say, well, what subjects do I do in high school to enable me to get into that world? And so were you quite planned about this through, when you did 11 and 12, year 11 and 12 subject selections? What sort of path were you going down from a study point of view at that point? Was it, was it an engineering sort of a realm?
Yeah, it was primarily engineering, because I was always really good at math. And I actually started at Franklin doing an engineering path. So they do a split program with another local university here called University of Indianapolis, which is a huge university, as well as Purdue University as well, another giant university, top 10, or part of the Big Ten, sorry, in America. So they partnered with them to do to assist with this engineering course. They didn't offer it specifically, but at Franklin, I did applied mathematics, and I actually took some classes through IU and Purdue in engineering to get that degree. However, I sort of found while at Franklin, doing math classes, that I actually preferred a newer field called data science. So I started following my passion in math and within data science, and sort of found that it still fit within the automotive world. And data science is a growing field, sort of limitless possibilities, and it's a very trendy word now in the industry, and lots of jobs out there for it. So yeah, it started off with engineering, but then still followed a mathematical path, but ended slightly differently. But I was still able to get into the same field, job field, when I started.
It's a really important point you make, because most listeners, I imagine, have not started college. So they're thinking about this. Most people listening to this podcast are in Australia, although we do have a lot of listeners in other areas now, but mostly in Australia. And so in our system in Australia, as um, year 12 approaches, and you're probably going to get asked 10,000 times during that year, what do you want to study? And you've got to sort of know, right? If you want to go to uni, you've got to put a preference in, and hopefully you get the right ATAR to get in. Um, it doesn't feel like that's very flexible, but as you've just described your experience over there, what you start with doesn't need to be what you end with. And if you're a little bit open-minded going over, which sounds like you have been, you can still get the outcome that you wanted. And for you, is working in this automotive industry in the way that you are. Okay, the fact that it wasn't an engineering degree per se necessarily, was more you went down a different realm to get there, right?
Yeah, exactly. And the US education system kind of leans itself to being able to come in sort of undecided and sort of find your path as you go through. Like lots of my friends, even people I swam with, came in their freshman year sort of undecided. They sort of picked an area that they liked, that they were interested in, but they were able to take classes in there. They were able to explore other areas of interest as well, and sort of pick and choose classes up until about the end of their second year or their sophomore year, when then they really kind of push you to sort of find a path, just so you're able to get all of the requirements and credits done. But yeah, there's lots of flexibility within those first 2 years to sort of explore what you're interested in, and there's no I guess bad repercussions for maybe picking the wrong path initially, because there's just so much option and ability to explore.
Yeah, great. And thanks for sharing, because I think that's an important message for those, maybe even in the younger years of school, thinking about subjects to pick for year 11 and 12, thinking ahead. So that's great. Mate, we might just come back to your life after college shortly, and we'll rewind a little bit, or five,
Yep.
6 years. Mate, I still remember meeting you, and I still remember the first time I met with you and mum and dad. You were a pretty fresh-faced fella preparing for your last school year in Melbourne. You'd just become school captain, which was an amazing honour, and you were swimming well and swimming a lot. And I remember most of our conversation actually was about swimming when we met. You were pretty focused on that and wanted to do really well, and you already were doing well. But I also remember the meeting going really quite long. And the reason it went long is because I remember your mum and dad and you asked so many questions, and really good ones. So you were right from the outset, you're very curious and interested in the pathway. And that's always a really good sign for us. So to see you 5, 6 years down the track, obviously having had a really good experience and still doing very well, mate, it's really, really great. But I do remember, yeah, you're a perfect candidate for this pathway. Do you remember that first meeting, mate, by any chance? I'm curious to see your thoughts on that.
It's a little fuzzy from memory. I think just because it was definitely an overwhelming experience. I still was very focused on making sure I completed year 12. So there was a big part of my kind of mind dedicated to that. But then on this other side, I was having to make a decision about where I wanted to go to college. Just learning about what the college system's like, because it is quite different to what we have in Australia. And making sure I was able to research each of the schools that got in contact with me, because I'd never heard of Franklin, Indiana ever before, until they knocked on my door and was like, "Oh, you want to come swim for us?" And I had to research what's around the area, where is this place. And even that doesn't always prepare you, because when you get here you meet the people, and that's always a bit of a different experience. But Yeah, and my parents were very, very helpful through that process, making sure that they asked lots of questions. I remember asking lots of questions as well, and the more questions you ask, I think the better it prepares you, and it just makes you feel more comfortable when you do end up flying over here and touching down.
Yeah, it's great. That's right. You're going to the other side of the world. You want to be prepared. So questions are the key. But I do remember the process, as it is for a lot of people. It was difficult, and it takes a time, and it's difficult because you're balancing school, you're balancing home life, social life, um, school commitments. In your case, as a leader of the school, it's a lot going on, and it's actually an achievement to get in to college, and then obviously the work's ahead of you from there. But um, it's interesting that you talk about the process, because obviously we've got a current crop of students in the last year or so that are you're trying to get to college during a pandemic, which is very hard to plan for. Talking about questions, I don't think we've ever had so many questions in the last 2 years, but it's all part of the fun because we know that it's going to be okay in terms of getting over. The process doesn't change, just might take a little bit longer at the moment. So it's interesting to hear you say that was very much pre-COVID, and it was still quite difficult at times. And I think one thing that came up quite a bit was understanding the divisions for you as well. I remember you were very Division 1 focused, which is completely normal. And in the end, you've gone to a Division 3, right?
Yeah, no, that's correct. Yeah, I remember you first explained to me about the divisions, and you hear about Division 1. They've like kind of like got all the funding, they've got all the best schools, and you're like, yeah, that's where I want to be. And yeah, I ended up going with a Division 3 school, and I guess initially I was like, oh, maybe I don't know, like, is that really the best path? But then once you get here and sort of learn about the divisions, they're all quite different, and they're all set up in a way that sort of benefits. Like D3 is definitely more education focused with sport, and then D1's way more like sport focused, but they also do consider education a bit. But even if you just look at some of the schools within some of these divisions, like some of the best schools in the US are D3 schools.
Yes.
Like you've got like MIT, Denison, Kenyon, John Hopkins. Like these are massive universities, with extremely good funding, and they participate in D3 sport because their priority mainly is education focused.
Yeah.
So just because you go to a D3 school doesn't mean that the competition's like any less competitive than no, a D1 school. The only difference is they just might not have the same funding available as a D1, but the level of competition, the level of coaching, the level of athletes in a D3 level might not be that different from a D1 school.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. It's not a definitive thing. So every university in D1 is better than every university in Division 2 or Division 3. It doesn't work that way, right? I think
Mm-hmm.
the message we constantly give on a daily basis is you got to go to the right college, and whether that happens to be a Division 3 for you, or Division 1 or 2, doesn't really matter in the end. It's just you got to find the right coach, the right place, the right environment. And there are some pretty average universities in Division 1, and there's some average Division 3s, and there's some very good Division 3s and very good Division 1s and Division 2s. So you've just got to go to the good one, whichever division that is. So thank you for sharing that as well, because that's a key topic that comes up quite regularly with our younger kids. So um, you mentioned the coaching being stronger. In that process, when you decided eventually to go to Franklin, I think the meeting of the coaches is a key part to that. Obviously, you want to feel comfortable with the coaches you meet, and I'm going to spend 4 years with this person. Do I want to swim for this person? Do I want to work hard for them? Am I going to enjoy their company? Am I going to enjoy their coaching style? Um, Coach Hendricks, how did you find him when you first met?
Oh yeah, he's an amazing person, and yeah, he's been an amazing person, an amazing friend over the past 4 years, and I still catch up with him regularly even after I graduate. We go on bike rides together, we catch up for lunch, things like that. So I really made a lifelong friend in him, and Yeah, I remember meeting with a bunch of coaches, and you asked them. I had like questions planned out that I asked them, and I kind of collected their responses to each of those questions, and kind of reviewed them afterwards. And like in addition to the questions I asked, I mean, he gave great responses, but he just also seemed like passionate. He was dedicated. He reached out to me more than any other coach from any of the other colleges that contacted me. Like he was always reaching out to me, making sure I needed everything, making sure I had everything. Like, did you need anything else from me? And that was really good to have someone who was so dedicated and passionate about wanting me to come there. Like, must mean that he must be a great person. And I remember I was trying to decide, like it was getting close, like the cutoff date for my decision, and I was narrowing it down between like 3 or 4 different schools. And he I was having like a final meeting with him, and he asked me, he's like, what are your final 4 schools? And I told him, and he then sent me a pros and cons list of all of them, as well as Franklin in comparison. Like he didn't badmouth any of the other colleges. He gave like a genuine, like, here are the pros, here are the cons of all these schools, and here's how Franklin stacks up. And that was a really good insight and really valuable information that he kind of gave me. Um, and then also in addition to that, he also connected me with some of the swimmers on the team too. Franklin also had another international swimmer there at the time. He was from Switzerland, and he got in contact with me too, and he helped us answer some of the other questions that you might not want to ask a coach. Just some of like the social life side of it kind of stuff, the partying, things like that you might not want to ask a coach or a recruiter or anything like that. So to be able to, talk about it from an athlete point of view, and to ask another athlete who'd also traveled from overseas was, just a great information. It was super valuable.
Yeah, that's good. Very well said, mate. And the part you said about the pros and cons list is interesting because that's a good measure of a coach. He's ultimately cares about you, and not trying to recruit you. Yes, he was, but he's trying to help you as well. And I think the good coaches do that. And so he obviously got your trust right there and then on that at that point. So and the fact that
Definitely, yeah.
that's followed through when you got there, which is important as well. And he's actually obviously when you arrived, he was the man that you thought he was, and he's continued to be. So that's important, mate. And again, the point about talking to your potential teammates is an important one. And obviously that's really helped you make your decision. So, mate, I just want to talk about Franklin and that experience now. There's that, obviously that's the bulk of what you've done in America so far is your time at Franklin. Um, remember your first day on campus, mate?
Yeah, so yeah, I remember getting in. I like landed like late at night. Um, Ended up losing my bags. Yeah, I lost my bag. So the first night there, I didn't have any of my luggage. But yeah, I stayed the night at my coach's house that night, and then the next day we moved into campus, and it was really like surreal. It felt like stepping into a movie. It we like, and he toured me around the local area. We went to the local high school, and it did look like something out of High School Musical. You go to these schools and places, and you're like, this can't be real. Like it shouldn't look like a movie, but it really did. It kind of felt, very surreal and very like straight out of a brochure or something. It was
That,
insane.
that the scenery, mate, or the buildings, or what was it about that looked like a movie?
Yeah, like just the scenery, the sort of vibe, the feel. Like you sort of get there into the beginning of summer, so it's got that whole like High School Musical summertime vibe feel about it. It was really, kind of like unsettling, but like comfortable, and just like shocking. It was, yeah.
You're sort of waiting for someone to break out into song, mate, and dance.
Yeah, pretty much. When I was touring around in the high school, because we used their facility sometimes, their pool. I was waiting for kids to start jumping out and singing and dancing as they went to lunch or something.
Yeah, that's funny. Mate, I remember after your first semester or so, we were passing through Melbourne for various work functions and whatnot, and we caught up with your mum and dad, Martin and Bridget, and they showed us just honestly the best video I've ever seen. You know which one I'm talking about, right?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, I do.
um, do you want to just, yeah, you can share what that was all about because that, mate, I don't tear up very often, but that was pretty special what your teammates did for you there. But yeah, can you share with us what happened?
Yeah. So yeah, the first year was definitely rough, especially for homesickness. And that's kind of, I guess the worry you get when you go to is like, oh, am I going to be homesick? And it is tough. You're fresh out of high school, you move halfway around the world, you don't really have that support system with your mum and dad like right next to you. And the time difference as well, makes it hard to like talk to your friends and family because when you're up doing stuff, they're like in bed asleep. And you just find like you miss some of those little creature comforts, like the one thing I remember missing is just like hearing Australian accents on TV, like something so small, like listening to adverts and stuff on TV. It's just like, I miss Australian shows and stuff. So,
Yeah.
and then once sort of the swimming season ended, I had a lot more free time and sort of, had a lot more time to like think and sit around, and ended up getting, just a bit more homesick. And I told, like, my coach was like, you should really go home for this summer, to catch up and refresh with friends. And it wasn't sort of in the plan at that time. I wasn't really planning to go home that summer. I was going to take some classes, and sort of stay around. And then one day, my coach calls a team meeting, and says that every year, after the end of season, they do a team scavenger hunt. So all the freshmen split up into teams. There's this team scavenger hunt, and the prize at the end is worthwhile. Like it's a good prize, and everyone was like nodding along, agreeing, and like yeah, it's great, and everyone played along really well in this scheme that I didn't know much about. So we do the scavenger hunt, split us up into teams. I'm full like gun ho. I'm running around like trying to find clues. Everyone's telling me to like stop, slow down, like take your time. I'm like, no, I want to win this prize. So going around like running to the library to find clues. And then eventually we end up back in the room. And I remember walking in the room. I had this envelope in my hand. My team was with me. And then the other team who we were competing against was already back. And I'm like, how are they back? Like, I have the envelope. I thought we were winning. So anyway, the coach pulls me up in front of the team and says, open this letter and start reading it. So I start reading it, not really paying attention, still kind of like huffing and puffing from running around from the scavenger hunt. But it turns out that the team, all of the parents and families of the team had chipped in and purchased me a plane ticket home for that summer so I could go back and see my family and friends. And I'm tearing up. They're all tearing up. But that gesture alone was just amazing, and kind of just reaffirmed that I'd picked such an amazing place to go to school, and I'd made amazing friends along the way, and that the people really, really cared about me. So yeah, that was an unbelievable thing that they did, and I never expected them to do that for me. But yeah, it was an amazing gesture, and yeah, I really appreciated them doing it because it definitely helped.
Oh yeah, mate, we could see it. As I said, we watched that with your parents, and all four of us are tearing up, and people in the restaurant looking, what are these guys doing? What are they looking at here? But mate, it was, yeah, it was unbelievable. So I have to. Do you still have that video? I need to dig that up and have a look at that because that was pretty cool.
Yeah, if I remember, I'll send you the link to it. But yeah, it's a fun video to watch.
It is. Especially, I remember seeing the look in your eye at the scavenger hunt, like you were so determined to win. You could see it. It was so funny, and then, well, you ended up winning in the end. That's for sure. My mate, it's an interesting point in about your team basically became your family right at that point. Obviously, then right, that's a pretty special bond. Do you think you might have got that, mate, if you'd have gone to one of those other colleges at a bigger university, like in Indianapolis, for example? I'm not saying that uni, but at a big uni like that. Do you think you might have had that experience, or did the smaller Franklin environment lend itself to more of these types of things?
I definitely think the smaller environment lends itself to that. The college I went to was, I think, less than 1,000. So when you compare that to like the universities in Melbourne, for example, you're looking at tens of thousands of students. And I went to a college that almost had the same population size as my high school. It's like this very small community, and that's what it kind of felt like. And not just even within the swim team alone, it was within classes. I found a great group of friends, who there was like 10 of us who had the same class like every single day. So we had the same classes, we were in the same major, we were studying together. So like we became our family, a little family unit there, and good friends made through that. And then yeah, the swim team being another a family unit support system. Even the parents of the swimmers, they'd always ask me like, "Do you need anything? You got enough food? And they even offered to take me out for dinner sometimes. I always had a place to go for like Thanksgiving and Christmases when you're on break, but there's not really enough time to go home to Australia because you only get like a week or two. So they're like, yeah, you can come stay with us. So yeah, I definitely think that small environment is very helpful, because you build that close knit community and like a family away from your family. So it was an amazing support system, and yeah, definitely don't think you get the same at a bigger university.
Yeah. And having said that, it's interesting you mentioned swimming there, because that's just the fact that you're a student athlete, not just a student blending in with all the other students. You're part of even within the university, you've got your swimming family as well, right? So I think that's the key. The fact that you're a student athlete allows you to, you're going to train with these guys and girls. You're socializing with them. You're training with them. You're on team bus together. It's it's a team. So what I want to talk about swimming for a bit, because that's not very swimming, is it? That's not normal. Swimming's
Yeah.
such an individual sport, isn't it? So how did you find it? Yeah, that transition from really dog eat dog. Really, you're in your own lane and you're trying to beat everyone else, and then going into this environment where you're doing team chants in the middle of the pool at the end of a meet and things like that. And talk us through it, mate. What are the differences?
Yeah, it's amazing the difference. Yeah, definitely swimming in Australia and swimming in Melbourne, it was very much an individual sport. Like, you book all the competitions you want to go to. You might have some teammates there, you might not. There's might be some meets you travel with as a team, but yeah, swimming went for me from being a very individual sport in Australia to being a very team focused sport in America. Because when you go to a meet, you're not just competing for yourself to get a PB or to make a time cut or anything like that. You're also wanting to beat the school that you're racing against, so that your team, like Franklin, could win the meet. You're getting scored based on where you place. The more points you get, you win that meet, and you wanted to win that meet. So and that really drives team morale. Everyone's like cheering and getting in team huddles. And um, I remember my freshman year, it was because it was night and day difference. I couldn't believe it. I was doing the 800 free relay, and we were like neck and neck all the way with this other school next to us, and there's parents in the stands screaming. All of the teammates are lined up screaming. It was like an unbelievable atmosphere. It felt like you were in the middle of the oval for the grand final or something. Just it was incredibly loud. I remember jumping in, and just having the feeling of all those people like cheering for you and supporting you, which is just completely different from what I'd experienced in Australia. Was it made swimming way more enjoyable for me. And I remember touching the wall at the end of that race and looking up, and we'd won. I'd beaten the other guy in the relay, and we'd won that relay. And everyone's jumping up and down and screaming, and they like pull me out of the pool, and they're like carrying me around. It was great. It's definitely a different atmosphere, and one I really enjoyed.
Yeah, that's amazing, mate. Makes me you're making me want to go back to college. Go do some masters swimming or something. But it's yeah, it's a good point you make, because not a lot of people will get that experience, like that experience you just had then in that pool, win or loss. I mean, the fact that you won is amazing, but um, that's rare. I think obviously we hear about Olympians talk about that sort of thing, how the crowd really pulled them and pushed them along, and you sort of don't really understand that probably until you experience it. So that's awesome that you've had that experience. You can always take that, mate. Tell the grandkids that one, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Mate, any other highlights you want to share over the 4 years? Anything in particular jump out? It could be something individual, as a swimmer, the team, or just an experience. Just in general, what were your highlights over your Franklin journey, do you think?
Um,
Put you on the spot here, sorry.
no. Yeah, definitely. I mean, every aspect of swimming there was very enjoyable and fun. I enjoyed getting to train every day with the team. I loved the coaching staff I had, and the head coach Andrew Hendricks was an amazing person and amazing mentor as well. Like he didn't just coach us; he was also mentoring us. Every time I felt homesick, I'd went in there and, just chat with me. He was a great guy to have a chat. And, he helps you with stuff, not just in the pool, also in the classroom, in your social life, in your family life. He's just a really good person. And to have, so, getting to know him was definitely a highlight. But in terms of my swimming career, winning, we were able to win all of our conference championships when I was there. So that was an amazing. We almost went undefeated when I was there. So that was just great to end on such a high like that. And and then another highlight, it's probably more of a funny story. It's just something I remember more, and it has nothing to do with swimming or it's just more of a fun coincidence that I had while I was at Franklin. I was at a frat party one night, and the frat party is like what you see in a movie. So I was there, and someone came up to me and was like, I met another Australian tonight. And I was like, okay, I know Australians get around, we're all over the world, that someone knows an Australian from somewhere. But they're like, yeah, they'll be here later tonight. So this girl gets here later this night. We end up chatting, and it turns out we have like a bunch of mutual friends, and she grew up right down the road from where I lived. So like we lived right next to each other, and we ended up meeting halfway across the world in a frat house in the middle of Indiana. So it's just a fun sort of story. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing, isn't it? It is. It's. I can tell you a few stories like that too. It's just that's the beauty of travel as well. I think being away from home, and those little moments don't happen if you stay at home, right? So, and you mentioned frat party too. I think we need to also point out that party's not a dirty word, right? It's okay. You can have fun in college. It's okay. You're going to do it if you go to college here. You're going to do it if you do anything back in Australia. But yeah, you just got to be obviously sensible about it. But yeah, that's interesting, mate. That's a really cool story. So, you mentioned I always sort of, you know, you mentioned homesickness and stuff like that. So you've had some challenges along the way. Not easy. We're not here saying that this is all blue skies. That said, I think the homesickness and those challenges that might come up, and some people get injuries and things like that, and sometimes have you know bad little moments with their teammates where they're not getting along, or someone on the team might be bothering them, or the coach might not be seeing eye to eye at different stages. That's all life sort of stuff, and I think that's important to say as well. That you know, if it all works out, you get the right college, it can be perfect. But it's you're always going to still have some challenges along those 4 years. So, anything other outside of homesickness, mate? Did you have a challenge you want to just share? Because we want to make sure it's a balanced conversation here about the experience. That's for sure.
um, yeah, one of the other challenges for me related to swimming was that in Australia, swimming's a year-round sport. But in America, it's very seasonal. Their sports are sort of very seasonal. You compete and train for this section of time, and then in the off season, there's depending on where you go. But in D3, there's no like expectation. Well, there's an expectation, but there's no like mandatory practices or things like that. So that was definitely different for me because I've been used to training like all year round. And then, yeah, in America, it's like swimming's from this time period. And in Division 3, you're technically not allowed to get coached outside of your season.
Yes.
So it's a very sort of manual process. You have to be the one to motivate yourself to get in the water, to swim, to practice, to put in the efforts, to go to the gym. And sort of naturally, I was a very motivated person anyway. So I didn't find it as challenging, but it was just something different that I wasn't used to, and sort of had to sort of get my head around that. And that was an actual concern when I sort of came over here about Division 3. And I'm like, well, how will it impact my swimming over time? Like, will I get worse because I'm not training like full on all year round? But I was able to still get in the water in the off season, and my coach still provided us with practices, even though he wasn't coaching us. And I was also able to jump in with like local club teams around the area, which was nice because yeah, again, where I am sort of a small community, so everyone who swims sort of knows each other. So all the coaches know each other. So they're happy to like have the college kids come swim and train with them, or use their facilities or whatever. So yeah, that was just a bit of a challenge and a bit different for me.
Yeah. Okay. No, thanks for sharing, mate. And in terms of the, moving fast forwarding to now or recently in the last year or so when you've finished, how did you find that transition? Was that a bit nerve-wracking, mate, or more exciting because you're going into a field that you're interested in, that transition into I guess the real world, I suppose, of the working world. How'd you find that transition, mate?
Um, but for me, it was pretty easy, I guess, because I was lucky enough to get an internship with a great company that I wanted, and this job sort of happened to fall in my lap at the right time.
Yeah.
Which I was very, very grateful for, especially because when I graduated was at the end of 2020, lockdowns going on. I was one of the classes that didn't get a graduation, like a traditional graduation.
Yeah.
Um, and then, there's lots of my friends who couldn't find jobs or struggled to get employment just because it was a crazy time. So I was definitely lucky to have that. And the transition was definitely made a lot easier because I built good relationships through doing internships and networking and things like that I had a job lined up for me. But I always think about if I didn't have that, it could have been a very different or sort of challenging experience deciding whether do I want to go straight back home to Australia and find work, or do I stay here for a little bit and longer and find a job, maybe travel a little bit more because in college you're sort of very stuck to, you have to go to class, going to practices and things like that. So your ability to travel where you necessarily might want to go is not always easy. And I think even if I didn't get this job, I probably would have stayed around a little bit longer just to work a little bit, do some traveling, get some work experience before if I decide to go back home.
Yeah. Okay. That's really good, mate. And again, really good for people who may be listening to this who are about to or considering staying in the US to work. But even the transition back to Australia too is going to be, what you've just said is going to be helpful. So thank you, mate. We're going to finish on just a few quick fire questions on the spot here. No preparation for you. So you got a first thing that comes into your head, mate. Favorite American food?
Oh, Buffalo Wild Wings.
Oh, yes, a man after my heart. Favorite professional sport in America?
Ice hockey.
Ice hockey and team?
I've sort of been mixing around teams. The local ones, the Blackhawks, they're not doing very well this season. So I think the San Jose Sharks, my other team.
Fair enough. You're a fair weather fan, mate. That's allowed. That's okay. Favorite US city you've happened to visit, mate, in your time?
New York.
Yep, awesome place. Back home, how do you follow in the AFL, being a Melbourne boy?
Essendon.
Essendon. Well, I'm a Hawthorn man, mate, so it's where we're lucky we're actually talking to each other here. Uh, Last one, mate. It's a bit of a longer answer here, but you keep it as short or as long as you like. But last thing, just thinking about young swimmers back in Australia. What would be a message for them right now? I suppose considering this pathway, let's say they're in any stage in their high school. What would be the message you'd give them right now?
Oh, to definitely, if you have the opportunity, do it. It seems scary. I was definitely scared leading up to it. A lot of kind of sleepless nights thinking about, oh, what if it all goes wrong? And even if it does go wrong, you've tried it. It's different. It's different to maybe what all of your friends are doing. And you've got stories to tell, and it's an experience, it's life experience, and you can use that. Even after you finish competing, or if you continue competing, or in the workplace. And yeah, if you've got the opportunity, you go for it because you won't regret it.
Well said. Well said, James. It's been a pleasure, mate, recapping a terrific and fulfilling college journey, just listening to you. And thanks for joining the huddle, mate. And we'll have to catch up again soon, hey?
No, it's been a pleasure, Chris. Always good to chat.